sir, cried Sam, springing up like a dog invited for a walk. Me? Go and see
Good morning. I don't even think it's 8 o'clock yet, so I'm not like ready or anything. But I have tried to make it a busy morning. I woke up before the sun came up for the first time in a long time, which is a little sad, but I did it, so I'm proud of myself. I, as you saw, spent the morning outside, at the beginning watching the sun rise from the opposite way over the trees, and drank my coffee, and then got back to work on where I left off last night, which was listening to the audiobook of Fellowship of the Ring, which is the Andy Serkis version, and I'm so happy that I have that story to come in a second here. And then also I picked my embroidery back up. This Friday's Hobbit Day, and so I figured this is a great time to pick up my hobbies again, the ones that make me feel very hobbity. Okay, so the story time about Fellowship. I am not an audiobook person. I get distracted too quickly. Too easily. I can barely listen to podcasts, but the ones I can really keep my attention are the ones that you have like multiple people talking, and so I have like a conversation that I can pay attention to. Like some person says something and another person responds. That's so much easier for me to follow than audiobooks, because if I get distracted at all and it's more than like 10 seconds, I have no idea how long it's been since I listened last, and I don't know where to rewind back to, and so it just ends up being a failure most of the time. But the reason I'm using the audiobook for Fellowship of the Ring this year, it's because I had another Vertigo episode a few days ago, a couple days at this point, and after I have Vertigo, I found that I do not need to read. That just makes it worse. It makes me dizzy pretty fast. So I decided yesterday that I want to pick back up Lord of the Rings. It's that time of year. I just need to. It's also just that time in my life that I need to. But I don't want to read and make myself more dizzy. So I just so happen to have the audiobook of Fellowship, which is kind of like a miracle, because last fall when they were doing the promotions for Rings of Power, Amazon was giving away like free trials of Audible with a free book credit, and so I took advantage of that and I got Fellowship of the Ring so that I could read and listen along at the same time. And I probably only did it for like a couple of chapters, and then I just kept reading without the audiobook. Even though I love Andy Serkis, I think his voices are amazing. He was doing such a fantastic job. I just am not an audiobook person. But right now, because that's all I really need to do is listen and not read, it's kind of like a godsend that I have this audiobook. So thank you, Lord, amidst all the other insanity that happened this weekend. At least I have that. So I'm a happy girl this morning. I have a few things on the docket today, which include going to the doctor and maybe getting an MRI scheduled for that vertigo. But it's going to be fine. I also have to go to work. I think those are the only two things that I absolutely have to do today. Besides that, hoping to continue getting through Fellowship. And then also, I am in the middle of a couple other books. So one of them is this, Godric by Frederick Buchner. I've given myself like a challenge to read a handful of pseudo-hagiographies. And if the word that just came out of my mouth means nothing, hagiographies are basically like the lives of the saints. They aren't written so much anymore, but hagiographies of old, usually like paint the saint in this really incredible light, really only telling the positive stories about that saint. But I have found a handful of, I call them like pseudo hagiographies, because they're not meant to totally be true, accurate depictions. They're like written in the last 100 years. Actually, I think much less than that, the 3 that I'm reading. But the point of them is that they're kind of like a fictionalized account of, a couple of them are real saints. I think that one of the books that I bought is not a real saint. And I'll show you that later. But this is the one that I've already started, is Godric. it's quite the time. I'm not sure what I think of it. I had heard a lot of people that I like and respect talk about this pretty positively, that it's an amazing book. I'm almost halfway through right now. The shadows are really fun this morning. I literally have the sun just right in my eyes. Anyway, I'm about halfway through, and I like parts of it, but a lot of it is... It kind of feels like I'm forcing myself to get through it, which is never fun. And that's actually part of the reason that I picked up Lord of the Rings, is because I don't like feeling like I have to read a book. I want to genuinely be excited to be in that world. And right now, Godric's is just making me sad and a little depressed. And I don't really need a whole lot of that. So I've been taking that one slowly, but it's short enough to where I could probably finish it in the next couple of days if I really wanted to. So there's that. I'll show you some of the other hagiographies later, but that's not what I have next to me, just like on my currently reading shelf. Like I said, I'll show you more of those pseudo hagiographies later, but I want to get back to listening to Fellowship and having a nice slow morning. I was thinking about something that I just said, and I feel like I need to explain because it sounded contradictory to another thing that I said, that I could finish Godric in a couple days if I really wanted to. Part of that is me just like forgetting that I need to reset expectations for myself for the next couple of days, that I don't need to be reading all that much. And part of that is just like I'll be going back to normal in the next couple of days, hopefully. Like, it's a pretty quick recovery after the first couple of days, just being totally normal again. As far as my eyes, because they hate me right now. But anyway, I will not be finishing Godric in the next couple of days, if we're being real. But maybe if I was getting better, like best case scenario. But my guess, the more accurate guess for me, knowing myself, is that I'm going to be almost exclusively listening to Fellowship, / maybe getting back into a physical copy of it eventually in the next few days, just because that's who I am. I just decided it's time to lean into it, especially because it's Hobbit Days coming later this week, and I'm me, and it's fall, and it's beautiful outside, and life is stressful right now, so I might as well read my favorite book. Why not?
Chapter 3. 3 is coming. Instantly. If you can think of any way of slipping out of the Shire without its being generally known, it will be worth a little delay. But you must not delay too long. What about the autumn? On or after our birthday, asked Frodo. I think I could probably make some arrangements by then. And you must go on a day set out, either north, south, west, or east. It may be your task to find the cracks I do, but that quest may be for others who wait for you. At any rate, you are not ready for that long road yet. Said Frodo. But in the meantime, for some mistake. Towards danger, but not too rashly, nor too straight, answered the wizard. If you want my advice, be very careful. That journey should not prove too
Whoa! Okay, I just figured out that my phone does this thing where if I put my hand up, it recognizes your palm and starts taking the video, which is fun. Okay. So, some time has passed. Honestly, only like a hour or two. It hasn't been that long, but I look like a person now. I'm like clean and put together and ready to go whenever I need to, which is not necessarily anytime soon. I've still got some time. But I've already had a very productive morning. You saw like the first half. Since I talked to you last, finished that little project. I put it up here on my bookshelf. I didn't really have a specific purpose for it, so it's just gonna be there until I figure out what to do with it. It's cute. I like her, but it's not like near the best thing that I've made. It was just something that I wanted to do, as it's been several months since I made any embroidery projects. So that's there. And then, so in Fellowship, they are about to stumble upon the elves in the woods on their way to Buckleberry. And it's so nice to be using this audiobook. I really, really enjoy Andy Serkis's performance and all the voices he does for the different characters. He's very good at doing the different accents. So if you're interested in audiobooks, if you're interested in Tolkienian things, really great option are those audiobooks. Though I will say I didn't have to pay for that one that I got with the free book credit. So it's up to you if that's worth it to spend the money, because before I remembered I had it on Audible, I almost bought it on Spotify so I could listen in the car, and it was like $30, maybe more, something like that, and I was like, no way, no. But so I'm in that area of the book. I also went ahead and pulled off of my shelf the physical copy. I almost said the hardcover. It's not a hardcover. The physical copy that I plan to use once I do start reading again. I love this version way too much to let it sit up on the shelf for forever. This was printed in the 70s, I'm pretty sure. I want to say 76, 73. No, 76. I was right. This was printed in 76, and it smells fantastic. My mom makes fun of me for talking about the way the books smell, but I wish that I could send the smell through the camera because it's so beautiful. There are times where old books can smell bad. I did have a book that I read last month. It was Bonhoeffer's Prison Letters. And I enjoyed reading the letters, but the copy that I have smells horrible. It's like a weird, sickly, sweet chemical smell, and I just hated it the whole time. This is the other end of the spectrum, that it's my favorite smell in the world. It's so wonderful. I'm going on about this for way too long. I love this book. I found the whole trilogy in a bookstore in Denton a few years ago for $2 a piece, and they're might be the best things that I own. And then the little bookmark that I have here, I'll pull out so I can show you guys. My mom got this for me. I think she found it on Etsy, along with a couple others that are just really cool Lord of the Rings inspired bookmarks. It's made of wood and the gold is shiny, if it didn't catch that. It's really cute. So I already went ahead and bookmarked where I am right now in the audiobook. I love it so much. As you saw in the title of this video, this is the 5th year in a row that I am reading Lord of the Rings. I also plan on reading the Silmarillion after this, also for the 5th year in a row. And to the extent that I'm able to plan out the rest of my life, that's kind of the goal, is to keep reading both of those every year. They are my favorite books. I don't know, it started when I was in college. I read them for the first time in 2019, and I had been kind of a fan of the franchise through my life. I say kind of because when I was a child, I was supremely terrified by all of the monsters and the ring wraiths and Gollum and all of the scary things that happened in the movies. I eventually grew out of that, obviously, and then bought these books back in 2017, and then started reading them at the end of 2018, but mostly read them in 2019. And so we had 2019, and then 2020, that was the year that I kind of decided this needed to be a yearly thing, because obviously 2020 was 2020, and I picked these back up for just a pick-me-up, and it ended up being the best decision ever. A really amazing thing that happened for me was I read Lord of the Rings that first time, And then I read the Silmarillion, and then COVID lockdown, all the things happened. And then when I reread Lord of the Rings for the second time in 2020, having read the Silmarillion already, it was like I was reading it for the first time all over again. Everything made sense. I enjoyed it like 5-10 times as much as I had before. It made me cry so much more. Like literally, I finished Return of the King, and I remember I was literally weeping and praying for like an hour just because of the things that it made me feel at the end. And if you have read Lord of the Rings, you know that the end is very emotional, or it can be. Hopefully, if you're watching this, you have read, because there will be spoilers coming up literally next. Because the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was the things that I've noticed this next time around. Because, you know, every single time you notice a little bit more, you like latch on to different recurring details. Listening, maybe that's going to help a lot more with just noticing tiny details, because your eyes can't really like just skim past it. Something that I noticed was that in Concerning Hobbits, he talks about how hobbits don't fight each other, they don't kill each other. They're very wonderful, kind of chill people. And that in their history, besides like maybe one time, they have never, you know, warred against each other. And if you have read Lord of the Rings, which I have, you also know that at the end of Return of the King, we have the Scouring of the Shire, and we have hobbits going to war against other hobbits, as well as men and basically Saruman and all that. But I just kind of realized that that idea bookends the Lord of the Rings, and I know that probably wasn't like a super purposeful thing, but it did make me wonder about just the placement of that, if that is supposed to really catch us. I mean, I think so. In the preface, you know, to Lord of the Rings, Tolkien talks about like he did not have any specific message in mind when he was writing this, which is just so funny because all of his fans have spent decades and decades just like parsing out everything that we can and trying to put all these like these little messages behind everything that we see, because there are these beautiful patterns and things woven together and things that we see reflected in our real world. So based on like what he's said about his own works, I'll just attribute it to applicability, like certain things that I pull out. But just the warring hobbits thing, I don't know if that, I guess it does kind of reflect the journey that the hobbits have been on, that they are not the same. Once evil entered the Shire, they needed to fight against it. But I just thought it was interesting that it shows up both at the very beginning and the very end, that so much has changed. And in many ways, it's so sad that that's the way that the book almost ends, with that very serious change. And of course, their society goes back kind of to normal afterwards, with a bunch of like Malorn leaves and a bunch of like golden-haired children. So things end up a little bit nicer afterwards, but I just thought it was a little sad and a little interesting that the hobbits had to change in that way because of the war. But the other thing, or one other thing that I noticed, because I haven't really been keeping track, and I probably should, because I'm listening and I'm like, oh, thought. Oh, a paragraph later, thought. And I'm not writing them down anywhere. And they're just all floating away into oblivion. But one other thing that I did remember was I finally really took notice of Frodo's first recorded dream. Somebody in the Discord that I'm a part of mentioned that a couple weeks ago. And I know that I had remembered seeing other dreams of Frodo's in the past. Things like when he's in the house of Tom Bombadil, that he dreams of seeing Gandalf, and then he dreams of what he's gonna see on the last pages of Return of the King, which makes me very emotional. And, you know, he has dreams like that that are very, like, foretelling, prophetic in a way. And then, so, this time I noticed there's a dream he has even earlier where he's looking over mountains. I probably should have looked up the specific passage, but he's looking out at these mountains that he's never seen before. which I'm assuming is supposed to be Valinor. Maybe I need to go back. Maybe I should have like looked at that quote again before I started talking about it. This is very much just like off the noggin. I'll come back if I was like seriously mistaken and I need to make some retractions, but